Cobb TV. Watch your life make sense.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Kabbalist. Thank you for joining us. With me as always, ready to answer your questions, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Laitman. So we'll begin with the first question. Before that, I'll remind you all that you can go to tv.Kabbalah.info and send your questions at any time. You just go to our Ask the Kabbalist page and you can submit your questions over video, audio, or text. Let's begin with the first question for today. This one is coming from Virginia. From Jim. It's a video question. Let's watch it.
My name is Jim, and I'm from Herndon, Virginia. And my question for the Kabbalist is, if we're in Kabbalah, we're supposed to I don't even know what we're supposed to do with the ego. We're taught that it's the evil inclination. So what is the ego's role? We can't get rid of it, so what do we do with it?
Use it correctly. As simple as that. Our ego is good. It's our entire nature. And we're not going to destroy ourselves and get rid of our nature. We can't. The only problem is, how do we use it? For the bad of others or for their good? If we're connected together like in a family, and we can't separate, then we have to find a way how to be good to each other. Why be bad? If we're in humanity, and it is now unfolded to us that we're all interconnected and we have no choice, and we can't disconnect, nature is closing us in like in a small room. So it's preferable for us to achieve peace, a nice connection between us, a good kind of communication, mutual participation, at least consent towards each other. That's what we have to do. Now our ego, that very ego that each one wants to come and sting the other and use the other, that very ego tells you, be careful, they can do the same to you. We have no choice. We're in a small room. Earth is small. We all have to find a place, a kind of a formula as to how to relate to each other nicely. I'm an egoist, okay, but the others are no less egoist than I am. And nonetheless, we have to do something here then. We have plenty of organizations all over the world, plenty of smart people. But you see, still we have not reached a general formula, a general organization which would help us somehow to be correctly connected. So that very ego, which is so destructive, it has to tell me, be careful, it's preferable for you to transcend your personal interests of one towards the other, using each other. Precisely because you're an egoist, try to build a friendly environment for yourself in which you could survive, or at least be secure, safe, have a good life, build a nice world for your children, build a home. You have brains, and that ego, through the brains and the right attitude, can bring you to great achievements. You simply have to teach a person how to do it.
It's exactly what I wanted to continue asking, because using the ego for the benefit of others, for the benefit of society, sounds like a tricky idea. At the moment, the world would look like
simple.
Okay.
It's something simple. Who doesn't understand that it's worthwhile doing? Everyone understands. If we're together and we have one room and we live together and we have no choice, we can't separate. So it's preferable for us, instead of constantly opposing each other, I buy a gun, you buy a cannon, you bought a cannon, so I buy a tank, I bought a tank, so you buy an aircraft, and we're opposing each other. Enough. Why do we have to constantly be opposed to one another such? You see, that great big ego later on brings to a thought, like between Russia and America. Why constantly spend our money and powers on arming ourselves for these war technologies and all? Let's start decreasing it a bit, because what? We'll constantly keep on defending ourselves from each other. We've reached a state, nonetheless, where we're destroying each other. There are no winners here. So enough. Maybe we'll decrease our ego. We'll bring ourselves to a smaller level. Here, we're talking about a kind of a caution in using the ego, but nature today is teaching us that we have to be connected. Not only, let's have an agreement, you don't eat me and I won't eat you.
I don't touch your stuff, you don't touch my stuff, that's...
Yeah, that's not enough. It's not enough. Nature obliges us today to be friendly, not only to concede for each one to wave something, but to be connected in a nice way. That's already a different problem. That's much harder. Instead of, you're my neighbor, I'm your neighbor, and we don't talk. We build a wall, that's it. That's yours, this is mine. That's not enough. In the past, it was enough. Today, we have to connect with one another. And it's revealed in the world that we can't go without each other. I remember when this last crisis started 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2008, 2009.
Yeah, I remember how in several countries, in Europe and in Russia, they were happy about it. They were glad that the crisis started in America.
At first.
Yeah, exactly. Now the Americans, they're wiped off the map. Then it hit them, much more severely even than it hit America. To this day, they can't get back on their feet. The American people, they nonetheless get on their feet much quicker. They correct themselves. Meaning, we see that a person doesn't even understand how connected to the others he is. And it comes from different directions, and man still doesn't know why. Truly, we don't yet understand how is it such that we're so interconnected that the crisis came to such countries that didn't depend that much on other countries, but it happened. And I'll tell you, there's this transcendental force, some kind of a spiritual force. There's a kind of connection between us, which is not on a physical level, but on a metaphysical level.
What do you mean by not a physical?
We're connected to one another like the whole of humanity. Each one of us is connected with others. You know, there's this research that everyone knows the whole world through 5 people.
Yeah, there's a research called 6 degrees of separation and so on, showing that the whole world is connected through a few degrees.
So probably that's the connection working on us. And not industrial connections, supplying electricity, oil, gas, money. These are all external things.
Okay, so let's leave these physical connections aside. What is this internal connection, inherent connection, natural one that you're talking about?
The inner connection is that we're connected through nature. Nature, not what we've built artificially. And this is what is discovered between us. And you can't do anything about it. You have to simply take that law, the connection between us, and to sustain it, not to resist it. Otherwise, if you resist the laws of nature, you suffer in the worst possible way. If you change different laws that you've made yourself in human society, not that much of a problem. But if you start resisting that which nature gives to you, as a law that starts to work in the world that's unfolding more and more, that's a problem.
But I want to know more about this internal connection that you are mentioning. Where is it? Where is it in a person's thoughts, in a person's...
It stems from that very point from which we've developed, from the small energy which exploded during the Big Bang and brought to the renewal of all matter in our world, and developed through the still, which is the entire universe, earth, on it the vegetative, animate, and the speaking, man. So in foundation, we're all connected, either by the collective law of gravity, the general law of the universe, anthropy, and information. We're interconnected, all of us, in all of the parts, from one end of the universe to the other. And thus, we have to also relate to everyone in this integral fashion. When you're talking about the general law of the universe, about the preservation of energy, about masses and energy and the relations between them and all the things that we research today, then why do you relate it only to the still great bodies, stars and planets? Why don't you relate it to the vegetative world? You see how everyone is interconnected on our small planet. It's a one collective atmosphere. We all live on a single planet, Earth. And connect to that collective law, both the vegetative, animate, and the speaking, meaning the people. And thus, you have to find that collective, integral, general equation which nature presents to you in an ever more evident fashion, that you have to keep it.
Why is it really that we can see this interconnectedness on those levels of still, vegetative, and animate, but we can't see it on ourselves? On the human degree, we don't see this connection clearly. Why is that?
We see that which is on a lower degree than ours. If I want to examine something, I have to be above whatever I examine with my brains. And thus, we examine and research, and all the tests that we make and the scrutiny, we turn it into science on the degrees of the still, vegetative, and animate. But on the speaking level, psychology, sociology, psychiatry, all that has to do with the human level, our internality, we can't check it for sure. In order to check it, we have to rise to even a higher degree, and we don't have that. Thus, all the social sciences, the science of man's spirituality, it's not actually a science. It's a bit here and there, whatever we're capable of.
Nothing concrete, nothing...
Picking from our lives, from nature, and collecting a few single things. We can't turn it into a science, but we see as a result that also in human society we have to follow the very same laws as the still, vegetative, and animate, only to simply keep it on our level. And the same as the still, vegetative, and animate are all interconnected and interdependent, we have to have the same attitude on the human level.
There's another question here that actually is kind of follow-up to this one. It's coming from Quindell. He's from Chicago. He sent us a video question as well. Let's watch it.
Hi, my name is Quindell Johnson from Chicago. I'm always thinking about the future, so my question is, how do you see the world in 10 years from now?
I can't answer that one way decisively, because the ball is in our hands. I have that book, by the way, a book by that name. Today, we are at a decisive point that either we reach the preservation of the integral law in human society, and from the human level to bring it down to the animate, vegetative, and the still degrees. If we will reach the preservation of this law in a good manner, a nice, pleasant way, so that we'll all connect, and all of us together will be connected like the whole of nature, or we'll have to undergo a very severe, dramatic teaching where we'll learn that we can't escape that our ego really pushes me to destroy others and build myself on the destruction of others. That very ego will push us to great wars, to very cruel situations. And then we'll see how incapable we really are of getting out of it. And we will reach the revelation of the need to revoke the ego, to cancel it, to rise above it, and humanity will reach a state where it must get rid of the ego in order to connect between themselves. It has to throw aside all that stands in the way of connection. It could be religions, it could be faiths, politics. It could be anything. Anything that stands in our way to connect, we have to throw it away, destroy it, burn it, for it to eradicate from the world. Then, humanity, which will understand that it has to do that, otherwise it ends. Otherwise we finish with life on earth, and also earth comes to an end. That's the power that we have today to destroy it. So truly from that cry, from that feeling of need for correction, for correcting our nature, we will discover the power of correction. We'll discover the upper force. Upper meaning higher than our ego, for it to correct us. That force is also immersed in nature. That force is the innermost force, the strongest, most powerful one, but we can discover it on condition that we really want to correct and want to connect, and we're incapable alongside with that. Then we discover that force. So I'm really hopeful that through our efforts to disseminate the knowledge of the wisdom of Kabbalah and all these global understandings and integral ones that are ever more unfolded now in human society, through it all, I hope that we'll bring it to the knowledge of everyone in the world, through the internet, through this whole dissemination, to the recognition that we must rise above the ego, that we have to destroy anything that stands in our way to bond, to connect, and then the connecting force will reveal amongst us. When we'll want it, it'll come.
I know you don't engage in fortune telling, but if you can just explain, how would you see, let's take the good path. You said there are two possible paths. It could happen in a tragic way, in a dramatic way, or it can happen in a way of people becoming more aware of what needs to happen. Say that this is the path we take, the good path. What kind of drastic changes do you see happening? Good changes. How would things change? I don't know, in the media or in education or in terms of boundaries between countries, will it still be there? Things like that. If you can describe, and within this period of let's say 5 to 10 years from now.
The bad way was already described to us by the prophets thousands of years ago. They wrote about the great problems that would come at the end of times on earth. And I don't even want to repeat it. Anyone can read what it says in Daniel, and these are very unpleasant situations. Such problems that never happened in the world before, and all that happened up till now is like a small detail with respect to these great big global matters, because we have to suffer to an extent to which we'll hate our nature in order to truly want some kind of a correction, in order to get out of our skin, to really come out of my nature, out of my body. To that extent, I will hate it, where I'm incapable of remaining in it any longer. Sometimes a person gets that kind of recognition where he eats himself for something, that he got into a certain unpleasant situation, into some bad thing, he starts criticizing himself. So people have such moments where they hate themselves that they would really get out of themselves, separate from themselves. That's what we have to reach, but it's on a scale of the whole of humanity. Thus, of course, it's very hard, and you need to feel great torments in order to want it, to want to transcend your nature. And that is the path of suffering. That's how it's called. And the other path, it's a path where before we feel these torments in a natural corporeal fashion, we start discovering that upper force above nature, that we need it. That upper force above nature is called the power of connection. As simple as that. Let's start discovering that power of connection, we ourselves, and then it'll come, and it itself will start correcting us, only we have to transcend to it, to want it, to start trying to connect, to overcome, to start drawing it.
If we start doing that, what kind of changes do you see happening in human society?
Recognition of evil. The recognition of evil. We start feeling how bad we are to this day, even though we don't feel it in practice. Now, in life, if you ask me, I'm not a bad person. I go to work, come back to my family, go on vacation, have a hobby. Ordinary citizen in some country. No good, no bad, everything's fine. I keep the main laws like anyone else. Not a felon. Suddenly, I discover through the study, through my attitude towards nature, towards globalization, towards all those things, according to what the wisdom of Kabbalah teaches, I discover how evil I am in my current state. It's unpleasant.
It also sounds bad.
Of course. Because suddenly you'll start feeling not that good, not that pleasant. True, and now you feel yourself good, everything's fine, thank God. But it's preferable for you to feel yourself as evil before that evil is revealed through blows. It's preferable for that evil to reveal in advance by you starting to take interest in the nature of the world, and then you correct that evil before you reach it physically. Physically, you'll reach that evil, suppose in 5 years. You'll discover it now and correct it before you come to it physically.
Without feeling.
Today, it's enough for you to feel it in your brains, in your understanding. And that's enough in order to correct. Like sometimes you suffer from something, even though it's nothing, but you feel how bad it is and you don't want it. We have to do the same. That's called the recognition of evil, and that recognition of evil is called by the way of hastening, where you advance yourself towards that bad, to feel that evil, that it then helps you to transcend the evil. Now, you don't have to feel that evil as if it will come in a future physical form, because you discover it theoretically, and with everyone together. So all in all, like kids at school, we learn about our evil nature, and we go and correct it together. And thus, these things, they work in a easy, quick, nice manner, like an adventure, in a good direction, even happily. Everyone together, and it connects us and leads us to a new state. You have a new paradigm, you have a new idea, a new future that shines for you, something that humanity doesn't have today. The main thing that disappeared from us is the future.
So this kind of education, awareness, basically saves us any possible suffering.
Yes, true. And thus it's called the path of the light, the easy way, the quick way, and without getting into suffering, without destroying earth and really bring the entire world to disaster.
Okay, we really have to wrap up at this point. Thank you very much for these answers.
Happy end.
Yes, and I would like to invite everyone to go and browse all the information we can offer to you on Kabbalah.info. And you can come and send more questions on tv.kabbalah.info on our Ask the Kabbalist page. You can submit video, audio, or text questions. And until then, let's all take this new path of light and awareness and consciousness. Thank you and all the best.